On the corner of Maple and Main Streets in downtown Lombard stands a building that's older than the town itself. The historic 144-year-old Maple Street Chapel has become a landmark in the village and is one of the most iconic buildings in the Chicagoland suburbs.
This building is 144 years old. It was built in 1870, and at that time, when it was built, it cost $5,000 to build it.
For nearly a century and a half, the building has been the center point of downtown Lombard. However, that wasn't always the case. In the late 1800s, a group of residents decided to build a place to gather and worship, and that's when the idea for the church began.
They built the one across the street first that burned down in 1869. Then the man that owned this property said he'd give them the lot to build the church on if they would build it on his lot, or on this lot. So it was then reconstructed, and the men came up with a plan. Some of them had been to Boston and seen American Gothic Victorian with the bell tower, and that's the kind of church they wanted.
The chapel was officially dedicated and opened on May 29, 1870, not only as a church, but also as a sort of community center. For the first 50 years of its existence, the South Room, now known as the Reed Room, served as the town's first free public library, as well as a town hall meeting place.
This was used as a central meeting place. The church was after it was built, and community get-togethers, some socials, etc. And as a matter of fact, I think it was right around 1900, or shortly thereafter, that they had the first movies, and they have a hole cut in the wall up there that we covered or restored, and would project it down onto a screen.
As the years went by, the town saw some major changes, including a name change from Babcock's Grove to Lombard. The railroad brought a large number of people to the town as they passed on their way to or from Chicago, and hotels popped up to accommodate travelers. What stayed the same, however, was the chapel. Town meetings continued in this location, and businesses started close to the building, making it the center point for the village.
It became a central focus in the Main Street and St. Charles Road, where businesses opened up and started. There was a hotel on St. Charles. They built a hotel on St. Charles Road, and that was one of the first things that went up. And there was a bank and a small store and so on.
In the late 1950s, the First Church of Lombard decided to build a new, bigger building next door to the chapel. The church still owned the chapel and it housed occasional meetings, but it was deteriorating. That's when the Maple Street Chapel Preservation Society formed to make sure the building stayed up to date.
We have the preservation and upkeep of the building, and then other projects have been improvements. Improvements include air conditioning the building, but the upkeep includes working on the exterior of the building. That would be the roofing. We've done some maintenance on the steeple itself to keep it intact. The painting of the building is always a very costly project.
The chapel continued to see regular maintenance such as painting and new pew cushions. In 1978, the U.S. Register of Historic Places added the chapel to their list. Preservation Society President Tom Scott purchased a new pipe organ for the chapel, replacing the old organ that had wooden pipes. In 1994, the Society purchased a new cross for the top of the steeple.
Yeah. Lightning hit it. It was a wood cross. And as a matter of fact, twice we restored the first one with wood and put it up there again, and lightning struck it a second time, and it landed over in the Methodist's front doorstep. It's about 16 feet tall. It doesn't look it from the ground, but it has served well.
Everything seemed to go well for the chapel into the early 2000s until members of the First Church proposed an idea to demolish the building. Church officials said maintaining the chapel was costing too much money. That's when Tom Scott and the Society stepped in again.
So a small group of us said that we wanted to restore the chapel, keep it, and they voted to tear it down. Well, the question was asked, how much is it going to cost to tear it down? And we had 14 families volunteer $2,000 apiece. So it was voted on again, and they said, well, if Scott and Marlon Meyer and some others want to do it, that's up to you. You can have it to do it. So we took it on as a project.
Other historical landmarks in Lombard tried to replicate the chapel's successful efforts to save their buildings. In 2007, talks began to demolish the DuPage Theater just down the street. A group called Friends of the Theater formed and proposed a restoration plan, but it was unsuccessful.
We're privileged to be recognized in the city as being one of the first buildings of the city. Of course, we were all saddened when DuPage Theater came down. I had even put some money into that, hoping it would be retained, but it wasn't.
Meanwhile, efforts continued at the chapel, including a full-out cleaning and indoor restoration.
We cleaned and restored the woodwork inside the building just to improve its appearance, and refinished the floors, put down new carpeting, had new pew cushions made. So they're preservation, but they're also more facelift.
Well, the building appears to be in great shape. There are some challenges that come with dealing with a building that's over 140 years old. Times have changed, safety regulations have changed, and building codes have changed, forcing parts of this historic church to be brought into the 21st century.
The biggest thing that we're working on, and it's the biggest fundraising effort we've ever had, is a fire sprinkler system. We really have gotten to the point where we have to ask, why have we done all this effort if the building could be gone in 15 minutes?
The restoration efforts were successful and earned the chapel national recognition.
We had the visitors of the American Association of Architects about a year ago, came through, and I kind of shook in my boots thinking, you know, they're going to find something wrong, etc. And we ended up receiving an honorary letter from them and a certificate, and it was stated that this was one of 150 buildings in Illinois that everybody should see. So I think we accomplished our goal.
With much of the story of the chapel living in the past, there are still plans for the future. Many members of the society have an idea for a future project and want to see the chapel improve with the times.
It would be a dream of mine to have $200,000 or whatever it would take to create a fellowship room with a bathroom. We can't have an outhouse.
In just 6 years, the chapel will turn 150 years old.
Yeah. So it's been an event that has come to fruition and fortunately filled my dream.